This is about defending democracy. This is no longer Democrats versus Republicans. What do you want your kids to believe in? There must be give and take.
This is White Flag with Joe Walsh.
Hey, former Congressman Joe Walsh here on a Thursday, late on a Thursday afternoon, early evening. Glad you're listening. This is White Flag with Joe Walsh. You know the drill. Every week I sit down with someone who does not think like me, and we model how to have respectful conversation in a world where too many people want to be at each other's throats. Thurston Childry reached out to me after I put out word on my Twitter feed a few weeks ago that I want to talk to anybody who disagrees with me about anything. And Thurston kindly reached out and said, Joe, let's have a talk about Trump, namely. That's where we disagree. Thurston is a former college football coach. He's currently director of business development for an executive search firm. Thurston, man, welcome. Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you, Joe. Glad to be here and looking forward to our discussion. We probably agree more than we disagree, but on one major
Well,
topic, that might be the thing.
no, and you're right, man, and that's what I think so cool and interesting. Like I consider myself a pretty strong conservative. I always was in Congress. I would imagine you politically, if you labeled yourself, you'd probably call yourself a political
Yeah. I
conservative.
always like to use the term fiscally conservative, socially liberal. I do think of myself fairly socially liberal on that end of things, but
Yeah.
certainly very fiscally national defense, immigration, that sort of thing, very on the conservative side of things.
Yeah, so again, to kind of set the table, you and I are probably very politically aligned on most issues. Like if I put up 15 or 20 policy issues, you and I would probably agree on 80 to 90% of them. So then that gets us to the meat, which is what I find so fascinating. We're both kind of in this conservative world, fiscally conservative, socially more liberal. But where are you on like guns? I'm a big gun rights
Yeah,
guy.
no,
Where are
I grew
you?
up learning to hunt. We went out to
Yeah.
Montana. I've hunted my whole life, but in the right way. Was taught gun safety at a young age, and I'm a big proponent of the right to bear arms. That being said,
Amen. Amen.
I don't think it's unreasonable to maybe scale back some of the far-reaching aspects of it. I don't. I'm not one of those people that necessarily thinks you need to be running around with an AR-15. I mean, you're
No,
not hunting
man.
an
And
animal with
you and
that.
I
So,
see
um,
we you and I would disagree on that. But that's interesting because maybe on a few of these issues I'm even more to the
yeah,
right of you. But not for now. So what I find so interesting is this. That's what you and I are
yep,
politically. We're generally pretty aligned. And yet we've got an election this year, Joe Biden against Trump, another rematch or a rematch. Um, I'm voting for Biden. With this matchup, you're voting for
yeah,
Trump. Like, I find this to be just cool and
yeah,
fascinating that two people like you and I who agree on most shit are going to vote for a different guy. Let's start, and I'll begin with you, Thurston. And then I'll ask the same question myself. I want to understand why Biden, Trump, you're voting for Trump. Uh, Tell me why. Let's help me understand that
yeah.
first.
I'll preface it all by saying I'm no Trump apologist. I'm not some MAGA lover, right? I was hoping that the Republican Party would come to their senses and drop him 2 years ago, and we would have another nominee, whether it be Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, someone along those lines. That obviously didn't happen. So I'm a very common. You ask what my politics are. My politics are common sense, like the gun issue you just said. To me, even though I support the right to bear arms, and if I'm forced to choose all the way one way or all the way the other way, I'm going to go all the way to choosing the right to bear arms. But common sense dictates you don't need to be running around with an AR-15. So to me, if you look at the last 4 years from a strict, how has my life gotten better or worse? Where has our country gone versus the 3 years? You got to leave out the COVID year. You just have to. That was, I don't care who the president was, we got to have enough common sense to say you can't blame Trump, just like I wouldn't blame Biden for the initial handling of COVID. So if we take all the way up to the 3 years before COVID happened, we had low unemployment, low inflation, stronger border. I think we were returning our country more to traditional American values, more emphasis on conservative policies fiscally. I think that for all the doom and gloom everyone said would happen with Trump when he won in 2016, and I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't a little scared at first too. Um, None of it happened. He didn't bomb North Korea. He didn't go start a war with Russia. And so we live in a world where perception is reality in some ways, but also reality is reality. And under Trump, we didn't go to war with anyone. Matter of fact, we had the Abraham Accords. We were working towards peace in the Middle East. We actually had a president who met with Kim Jong Un for the first time ever. We were working towards solutions as opposed to being railroaded. Everyone talks about Trump, the Putin apologist, but Putin didn't invade Ukraine under Trump's watch. He could have, but he didn't. Okay. Hamas didn't attack Israel under Trump's watch. They could have, but they didn't. And so, as the president, you're of course not always directly responsible for everything that happens. That's insanity to say, but history judges you based on what does. And so, Trump, for all his faults as a human being, the results for everyday Americans under his watch are better then than we are now. And
So stop there,
yeah,
stop there, stop there. That's a nice summation. So you look at Biden, Trump, um, and now you compare the records. And I appreciated, Thurston, you saying, because COVID was such a
yeah,
weird thing, right? So the last year of Trump's presidency, and again, I'd say maybe the first year of
yeah,
Biden's, the bookend there, take COVID. Though you and I, we may have one big disagreement about COVID, how Trump handled COVID. But regardless, take that out of the picture. When you compare Trump's presidency to Biden's presidency, you'll vote for Trump because of the record and the way how you felt America was then as
yeah.
opposed
Because
to
I
now.
look at it and say this: what matters to me is policy and the betterment of the American people from that standpoint. The person, like, yeah, Trump's. I don't know if I can cuss on this podcast or not, but
Yes,
okay,
fuck yes.
Trump's a fucking asshole. Okay, he is. No doubt about it. But Biden's no prince either. That guy's the most arrogant, demeaning, talks down to people with his little whisper. We act like the guy's this Mother Teresa. He ain't a cup of tea either. And so, look, no president's ever going to get into office and pass a law that makes all of America not racist, not homophobic, not against immigration, whatever it may be. You want to fix those problems, raise your kids better. I was raised by two of the most conservative people you've ever met, but they taught me to treat everyone with respect and treat them all the same way. Gay, black, white, straight, it does not matter to me. And we're not going to fix, like everyone fixates on Trump's behavior, but Trump in office, Biden in office. Biden's been in office 4 years. Our racial politics, our stuff that's going on these college campuses are worse now than they were under Trump. So, yeah,
Hold up for a sec. Hold up for a sec, Thurston. It's an interesting point. And I appreciated you being honest, like you think Trump's a fucking asshole. Do you think, and obviously I think Trump's an utterly horrible human being. Do you think Biden is as bad of a person as Trump?
no.
Like when it just comes to basic
Human decency? No,
decency, whatever.
no, I don't. I don't.
Okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Um, would it ever get to a point where a candidate's character was so fucking abhorrent to you that even when it came to policy, you still couldn't vote for that guy?
Yeah, it would if it got to a point where I truly felt like that person's like I think Trump plays the part. I had people that worked in his administration, and some people will refute that he was a great guy. But I also have friends that I went to business school with that worked directly with him that said he was the nicest guy that they've ever met. And I think a lot of it, the Twitter, some of the stuff plays to the audience. And he's an actor, and he's always been that way. And I think a lot of who he is deep down inside gets overblown by the media. I mean, what he said in Charlottesville, I was there for that. That was the start of my business school. Like,
That that was you're right about that. The media again, Trump is so
right,
incoherent. Like he didn't say what the media said he
right.
said there.
And
I
it
agree.
happens frequently where even the January 6th stuff, right? They talk about marching down to the Capitol, but they leave out the part where he said blatantly, we're going to peacefully march down there and peacefully protest our constitutional right. And so I think, yes, no doubt he's a fucking asshole, but Dennis Quaid said it the other day. He's like, he's my kind of asshole. Like he's,
Well,
you know,
so stop there. Yeah, that's a great pivot, Thurston, because that's what I was going to say. When Dennis Quaid came out a couple days ago and said Trump's an asshole, but he's my asshole, so I'm voting for him. Um, that's a great place to just
yeah,
pivot right now and let
yeah,
me, and then
yeah,
we'll come back and then we'll engage. So I think I got a decent understanding of where you're coming from, why you support Trump. Um, and the Quaid quote and your quote, I think very succinctly explains why I can't support Trump. It is, like, I don't give it, Trump is an asshole. I think he's one of the worst human beings I've ever met or known. But I don't care that he's an asshole. Like, I don't care that he tweets mean tweets and says mean stuff. I don't care about that. I oppose him because, and I'll just throw a couple at you. I think he's unfit to be president. He lost an election in 2020, and he's the only president in American history who lost an election and refused to concede. And he won't concede if he loses this election. Like, to me, that's disqualifying. That's one example. I think he believes he's above the law. Trump does. Um, he called the men and women who died in uniform suckers and losers. I could go on. So and the last thing I'll say, Thurston, um, he he did try, like, he didn't accept the loss, and he did try to do what he could to overthrow an American election. Like, to me, that's like, forget about policy. He's just like, that's unfit. That's, you're attacking our democracy doing shit like that. So I'll stop there. That's like, it has nothing to do with
yeah.
policy. I probably agree with Trump on more policy than clearly Biden. But I think, like, when I know a lot of Democrats say this, Thurston, like, and maybe it's a talking point for some. It's not for me. I genuinely consider him to be a threat to our democracy.
That's
Respond to that or
that's just
react to that.
amazing to me because I look at it and say everything you said. Like, first of all, we're talking in black and white now, right? It's Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. Well, Biden's said plenty of dumb shit during his time. If you ain't black, you ain't black. If you don't fight for
No, no,
like,
yeah, I'm not talking. I agree with that,
right,
Thurston. I'm not
so
talking about
right,
dumb
so
shit.
it's
I
not
agree.
like we have Donald Trump who's this absolute fucking asshole and Joe Biden who's the most amazing human being ever, right?
Agreed. So put the
Right.
asshole aside. and let's look at one. Let's examine one thing, and I'll ask you a question
Yeah.
first, and maybe you disagree with me. Trump lost in 2020, like he lost that election. Do you think he lost that election?
I will say this very carefully because I'm not an election denier.
No, no, no.
Yeah,
Whatever,
I'm
whatever
not
you
an
think.
election
Take your time.
denier. Joe Biden is the president of the United States of America, and he won under the votes that were counted uh, in 2020, and he's been our president, and I've accepted that. I will say this: when Trump, I think a lot of the frustration that Trump had with the election were there were a lot of irregularities this time around because of how much the election changed with mail-in voting during COVID. So these late night, the 600,000 vote deficit that was made up in Pennsylvania at 3 a.m. Like, I'm not saying that wasn't true. I'm not saying that all of those ballots were not completely legitimate. Okay. But we were in a situation that we've never been in American history where that happened. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with questioning something that is irregular. That's never happened before. We just went through an election where most people voted through mail, where ballots were shipped to people who never requested them. If you don't want to vote in person, look, election day should be a federal holiday. That's a whole nother collection. I think if you want to vote, get your ass out and vote in person. But if you were scared of COVID, if it mattered, you needed to request the ballot. People just being sent ballots and all of this, to me, that's where, if you want to say the election was stolen, it was the rules in which the election process changed that I think lost Donald Trump that election.
So let me stop you there. You make a good point. COVID
Right.
hits, once in a lifetime health crisis. And so, because people were afraid to go to the polls, a number of states made mail
Yeah.
in balloting much more accessible, even universal. Get that. And again, I generally supported that because a lot of people,
Yeah.
again, it was COVID, unique thing. And my beef with Trump, Thurston, is if Trump had said that, what you just said, a lot of
Yeah.
people would have agreed
Right.
with him. But Trump said voter fraud everywhere, stolen, bad Dominican, these voting machines, and 100,000 dead people voted. Like
Yeah, and I
Trump
agree with you.
made
And
up
I agree
shit.
with you there. And that's where I have the problem with it. Look, there's nothing in the Constitution of the United States of America that says you can't protest an election and you can't challenge election results.
No,
And so he
exactly,
had every
exactly.
right to
That's
do what he did, but he should have shut up
amen.
once he lost the challenges that he set forth. And that was his great
When that
mistake.
it's
And that's
Well, that's a great point, Thurston. The one thing I'll say about Pennsylvania and a lot of other states, that was no change in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has always counted the votes that come in by mail, and they got to be in by the end of election day. That's, every
right,
state has their
right.
own rules. And Pennsylvania always counts their mail-in
Sure.
ballots last. So that's
And
why, again, and
look,
Trump and everybody knew that.
but
They've
at the
always
same
done it
time,
that way.
Joe, like, and again, I'm fine with it. Like Trump should have been allowed to protest the results to a point in which he lost those protests and he should have accepted the results. And I don't
So let me stop you there. Let me stop you there because that's a great point. And I agree with you. And I say this all the time because I've been a candidate. You lose an election,
right,
like I have, you have legal avenues to challenge the result if you
yeah,
believe shit
right,
went on. Once those legal challenges are out there and they've been settled, those challenges, you must accept the result. And even after Thurston, all his challenges failed, at that point,
yeah,
he was incapable of putting the good of the country before his own interest and just saying, I tried, it
yeah.
sucks, but I lost. Joe Biden's our new
Couldn't agree
president.
more.
So, I have a real problem with that because I think he'll do it again
Yeah.
this time. Don't you think that's really serious?
I just don't think it's that serious because everything he tried and all his bitching, he still wasn't the president at the end of the day. Like he's entitled to say, like, it's not illegal for him to say to this day 2020 was stolen. Like there's no I can believe that
But is
unicorns
it?
exist. Like I'm wrong,
But
but
is it?
like
But are you, Thurston? Are you agreed? He can say whatever he wants. It's a free country. But are you disappointed that he
yeah,
still
oh, it
says it?
pisses me off every time. I'm like, just let it go, man. Like, but at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. And he did leave office and he didn't make him drag his ass out of the White House. Did he do it the wrong way with less grace than he should have? Yes. But he still left and there was no military
What?
coup and we didn't fight a civil war. And, like, is he still an asshole about it? Yeah. But he still left. Like,
Well, yes, he did still leave. I think our the system
yeah.
held. Um, I mean, he tried to get the Justice
Yeah.
Department to break the law. He tried to get members of Congress to lie. He called up the state of Georgia and said, "Damn it, find me 11,480 votes." I mean, he led an effort to put up a slate of fake electors. He pressured secretaries of states all around the country. To me, this is more than just being an asshole. This is a sitting president using the powers of his office to try to overthrow an election. Like, I think that's off the
I'll push
charts.
back a little bit. Like all that stuff
Yeah.
you just mentioned, like I think during that time frame, this was all, mainly November, December, everything that you mentioned, right?
From
Day,
election
right.
day up until
And
early
so, like,
January.
I think he genuinely believed at that time because it hadn't gone through the courts of law and the proper legal channels that he had been defrauded. And look, there were a lot of irregularities. Like, you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to sit there and say Arizona and Georgia can count 15, 20 million votes in 6 hours, and then it takes 2 weeks to count the next 30,000. Come
Oh,
on, man. Like,
oh, I can. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, Thurston, but let me tell you, we have 50 states. They each run their own
yeah.
elections, and let me tell you, there are some states that are advanced, and there are some states that are still slower than
Right.
shit. So it
Well,
doesn't
well, but well,
surprise
hold
me.
on, hold
But
on,
every
hold on. No,
state
no,
has
you
different
not
rules.
listen to what I've said. Arizona counted
Huh.
10 million votes from the close of the polls till the end of day one, and then there were like a hundred
I
thousand outstanding votes. It took them 2, 3 weeks before they could get to the end of that. Like, that's not slow. You count 6 million, 10 million in 8 hours. How can you not count 100,000 in the next day?
You're talking about
Arizona and
Arizona?
Georgia. Both. They both took because those were the states Trump was waiting on to finish their vote count that extended through that following weekend. Because I remember sitting at the bars here in D.C. talking about, oh, is all the voting gonna hold and who's gonna win? We're a week into it, and we're talking about a couple thousand votes here and there. Like,
Yes, yes. But while that's going on, and while Trump is throwing down challenges all over the place, Donald Trump is pressuring people to break the
yeah,
law to change the results. That's
no, that's
not
not good at
good.
all. Like he should have during that time, because obviously during that time he felt like he was defrauded. There's no supporting the breaking the law aspect. Like absolutely no supporting that. But again, one singular when you have to look at a vote, right? You have to take into account more than just one. I don't like people who vote on one singular event or one singular policy. I think miss the point of politics and voting because one singular event or one singular policy does not shape 353 million Americans. And so you have to take, hey, this guy does some things really shitty. This guy does some things really shitty. This guy does some things really well. This guy does some things really well. Who does more right and less wrong than the other guy from a policy standpoint as it affects everyday Americans?
Right,
And that's who I'm going to
right.
vote
And
for
that's,
every
yeah.
day, unless the guy's a murderer or, you know.
Well, No. That actually, Thurston, that's an interesting thing to say. And I generally, if you've got two candidates, I generally, historically, always vote for the candidate who's more aligned with my
Right.
policy. I get it. This isn't with Trump. It's not policy. Like trying to or not accepting the will of the people, trying to overthrow the will of the people. To me, that has nothing to do with policy. That's bigger. That's like an
So
attack
let me ask you
on
this,
our
Joe. Then
very
let me ask you this
democracy.
question. So why not vote for him this
Uh,
year? Let's let him win. He wins. He's gone in 4 years. Can never be involved in it again. Because if he loses, you're going to go through the whole scenario again here in 2024. Why not just let him win?
okay.
Then we get our policies,
Well,
and then he's gone in 4 years. And
oh my God, Thurston, this is the only thing you've said that I'm really pissed off about. Why not just let him get his way? Well, no, because here's the other thing. And does it bother you? He's been asked now 15 times. If you
yeah,
lose and you challenge and the challenges don't work and it's a fair
right.
election and you lose, will you accept the results? And he will not say he
Yeah.
will.
But again, why do
That's
wouldn't you rather
huh,
have $2 gas, $1 inflation? Wouldn't you rather have a stronger border? Like
no.
over some guy that says something? Like I just don't think the average American cares. Like they care about if they feel like they can walk safely down to the grocery store and pay a reasonable price for a gallon of milk more than they care about what some guy is saying. Like,
I yeah, you may be right. I'm not going to speak for the average American.
yeah,
We all have to vote our conscience. No, I don't. I can't vote for him because of these
yeah,
other things that have nothing to do with policy. To me, preserving our democracy,
yeah.
just me, is a hell of a lot more
It's
important than the
interesting you
price of
keep saying
gas.
that because I'm curious. Like we keep hearing this
Hmm.
threat, like threat to democracy, right? I think I told you this last time we spoke, right? It reminds me of 16, where it was, oh, he's going to go blow up. We can't trust him with the nuclear codes. He's going to be off the wall, right? But don't we trust the system that we've had in place since 1776? That one man can't change all. Like we have the House, we have the Senate, we have the Supreme Court, we have checks and balances, we have state governments, we have all these things in place to prevent this threat to democracy from
Right,
Donald Trump's not
right.
going to get into the office and then command the U.S. military to overthrow every rule we've ever had so that he never leaves office. Like, it, we
So
gotta
it's
be
a
in
great.
reality a little bit. Like I get it, we all don't like him, but
Well,
like
no, Thurston's a good way to put it. And I do have trust and faith in our institutions to defend
right,
against someone who would be a threat to democracy. I do. I worry about it, but I do. But why vote? But again, and you
right.
disagree with me, if I feel he's a threat to democracy, why would I vote
Yeah,
for him?
yeah, no,
Like it,
I
like
I
I
I
genuinely
agree.
feel that. So even if I say, oh, I think the military can hold, or I think the justice system will hold.
But I guess that's my point is
Okay,
like
so I'll roll.
what like people say threat to democracy. What do you really think he's going to do this time around? Because people thought the world was going to end in 2016. It was you saw it. I mean, let's be honest. It was he's going to blow up North Korea. Everything's going to go that stock market's going to bomb. Our institutions are going to explode and none of it happened. And so
Well,
why wouldn't we take a man for his actions more than his words? Like,
but I agree. But yeah, see, here's the thing, man. And I say this especially as a president. There's no difference between what a president says or does. It to me, it's the president does things. I was a congressman. Shit that I said, same thing. I'm responsible for what I do and what I say. The president of the United States is the most powerful
yeah,
person on the planet. What he says matters every bit as much as what he does. Um, I don't want to keep beating this around the bush. So we disagree on that. So I'm summarizing in that you believe Trump's an ass, but there's no comparison for you in the policy that you'll probably get. You believe you'll get in the next 4 years with a Trump over a Biden. You prefer that record. The difference is, even if you and I are aligned on most policy, I think Trump is such a unique threat. The policy doesn't matter to me. I think that's fundamentally where we
Yeah.
disagree. Does it, Thurston? Does it? And I get it. You say none of it happened, but like a lot did happen, and you keep bringing up North Korea, which is interesting. I mean, I think he was just. I think it was horrible the way he got down on his knee and sucked Kim Jong Un's toes. I mean, what like shit like that, and like the way he like seems to worship dictators, and he does. He's never ever 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 said something bad about Vladimir Putin, and he's actually said that he's rooting for, like Tucker Carlson said, he's pulling for Russia. And I have no doubt that if Trump's reelected, Thurston, respond to this, I don't think he'd want to give Ukraine a fucking dime.
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah.
thought?
Look, I, I'm all for.
And I don't know where you
Yeah,
are on
I'm
that
all
issue.
for any effort to bring peace to the world. Okay, and so whether that's by force or by, you call it, coddling a dictator in North Korea, but to me, the fact that he was received over there as the first president,
Oh,
and there was, yeah,
they loved it. He legitimized a
but
killer and a
okay,
dictator. He
okay,
legitimized it.
okay, but
What did he
wouldn't
get?
we rather have a situation in which there was at least a dialogue and we're not wondering if North Korea is going to launch a nuclear missile at the United States tomorrow? Like, we can at least work
Well,
toward, like, to me that was, and you may laugh at it and that's fine and say, oh, it was not real and it was an embarrassment, but it was an effort. And like, in the absence of an effort, what are we doing? We're allowing a dictator to exist, continual hate against the United States of America. And to me that seems far
well,
more
and
unproductive than at least going over there and seeing what happens. And you know what, if he turns out to be who he probably is and it fails, at least we tried. At least we tried something on behalf of peace for the world, right?
we
Yeah,
disagree with that because I think sitting down with him gives him a legitimacy that he does not deserve. Period.
and that's a fair
Um,
point. Like, look, yeah,
period. And nothing's changed. I mean, they during Trump and Biden. I mean, North Korea's still testing and doing all the shit. The visit didn't do anything, but it gave him credibility, legitimacy.
I think he the presidency ended before we could have seen what could have potentially happened. Um,
You said, Thurston. You said like Trump's an asshole, but short of, I think you said, it short of Trump
yeah,
killing somebody, I'm voting for him because of policy. Is there, help me with, is clearly Trump crossed my line in what's
yeah.
acceptable. Is there a line he could cross with you
Uh,
where you couldn't vote for him?
I mean, I think there's definite lines. I wouldn't vote for Biden. I just sit out the election. But I mean, he's going to have to do something actionable. Like, I just, we keep going back to this discussion between actions and words. And you make the point that a politician's words equal his actions. And I would push back and say, no, they don't. Like, it matters we didn't have wars under him. No matter what he said, it matters we
Well,
didn't. And it matters we
well,
have two now under the existing
well,
president who says all the right things. It
well.
matters.
Hold on though. Hold on. One point. Uh, Again, words do matter, and respond to this. I I voted for Trump in
Yeah.
16, and I was on the radio around the country, and then I started moving away from him right after he got elected because I I couldn't stomach him, what he was doing. But my final straw, Thurston, was Helsinki in the summer of 2018 when Trump stood in front of the world next to Putin and he's asked a question and he said, I believe Putin. In essence, I stand with Putin and not my own intelligence people. Uh, like Putin didn't do anything in our election. Putin told me he didn't. That was like those were just words, but in front of the world, I went on my radio show that night and I said I'm going to do everything I can to make sure he loses. To me, that was just an utter act of disloyalty. He embraced Putin over our own people. I don't know if you
I
remember that, but
vaguely remember that.
yeah.
But I mean, we,
But those are words, and that was like,
but we
come
went down the
on.
Russia
We
collusion
everybody
hoax,
knew.
and there was nothing there.
Well, but no, but we don't have to get into the collusion aspect. He was asked, I mean, everybody in the
Yeah,
Trump administration knew that Russia on their own did fuck with our election like they never had before. Everybody in our intelligence community, Mike Pompeo, Nikki Haley, everybody knew it. Trump could never admit it. And so he said, Putin told me they didn't fuck with our elections. So I believe him, not our own people. Like that's just
I
it's
mean,
stupid, but it's
I don't
disloyal.
disagree. Again, it's just words to me though, and like maybe I'm just one of those people where like we've gotten so soft as a society. We get so offended by everything people say now. Like people are just going to dislike certain people and we're not all going to get along and people are going to say mean things and you just got to grow up and get over it and be a good person. And I just don't get caught up in all the asinine shit Trump says. That's who he is as a person. Like he's out there he's a reality TV star that we put in the White House, right? He's going to say outlandish stuff. That's how he built his base into winning in 2016. And so I think you may laugh when I say this, but I think his
Huh.
genius is actually his off the wall, batshit crazy personality. I think that's what people gravitate towards that they haven't ever before in a candidate because they're so sick and tired of the Mitch McConnells and Nancy Pelosi's who have always said the right thing but never done anything for them. Like they just feel like they collect a paycheck, sit there in Washington. They'll say everything you want to hear, but what have they really done? And I think Trump was the first person to come in and kind of blow up the traditional politics of the US government. And I don't blame anyone like yourself or any politician or like I like Larry Sabato, who I love to death and was one of my professors at UVA, and I'm very close with him and all of that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't blame anyone. Like, if anyone came into my profession that didn't know what they were doing and were an outsider and tried to tell me everything I was doing, I would hate their guts too. And so, like,
Agreed. I no, Thurston, I agree with that. And again, this is what makes me weird is that I didn't come
yeah,
from that establishment. Like I come from the Tea Party. I'm
yeah,
still a Tea Party guy, and I voted for. You're right. I voted for Trump in 16, not because I liked him, but I wanted to blow up our
yeah,
political system. We needed
right.
disruption. I was sick of the old Republican Party, so I got it and I believe disruption is good. I just think he's an evil disruptor,
Let me
not
ask
a
you
good
something
disruptor.
because it's interesting you bring
Uh,
that up. So you said you voted for him in 16. It sounds to me like really the big pain point for you and sticking point for you is the refusal to accept the election results because let's be honest, Trump was every bit the asshole in 15, 16, 17, 18 that he is now. None of that's changed. He said as much if more outlandish stuff that got you to vote for him in the first place as he says now,
and I
right? And it didn't matter at the
right
time to you then, but it matters now. And it seems
no, but the again the outlandish stuff still doesn't
yeah,
matter to me. I'm not talking about. I mean, I think he's
right.
an idiot, and I think he says stupid shit all the time. None of that stuff matters to me. It's what he's done.
It seems like it's the
Uh,
one thing he's
uh,
done. The
Oh no, no, no! A bunch, because remember, he didn't not accept the election result until
Sure, but it all
2020.
centers around
I
the election, or the main part of
I
that is what it is.
I turned against him late 2017 and then finally mid 2018, for a lot of reasons. Uh, but again, having very little to do with
Yeah,
policy. I opposed
yeah,
tariffs. I thought Trump's tariffs are stupid. But so what? I wouldn't vote
sure.
against him because of that. Um, uh, no, and Thurston, like I didn't, and I've confessed this publicly, I didn't pay much attention to him during that first campaign. I didn't take him
Yeah,
seriously. I figured he's not Hillary. He'll get elected. He'll play a bunch of golf. He's probably stupid, but he'll put good people around him. That didn't happen to me. But yeah, I did believe we needed disruption. Do you? Let me ask you this question, Thurston. I don't know how you'll answer this. Do you think Donald Trump
oh
lies?
yeah, absolutely.
Do you think he lies more than most politicians
No,
lie? You don't.
no.
Like, do you think he lies more than Joe Biden lies?
Do you watch any of Joe Biden's press conferences or Kareen's daily press briefings? Did you watch Joe Biden say inflation was 9.4% when he took office on his?
He
Yeah.
said it twice.
Like,
He said it
what do you
twice.
mean? Does he? Yeah, they all lie. They frame the story in a way that's a lie, but there's a sliver of truth in everything they say. So,
So you don't see, like, I'm asked all the time. One of the things that really moved me away from Trump at the beginning was after he got
yeah.
elected and I started to pay attention to him. I mean, every time he opens his mouth, he lies.
Well, let me
Every
ask it
time.
back this way to
Like
you. When has a
I'd
politician
never
ever
seen
said
that before.
something that I was wrong, this wasn't true? They all frame it in a context of, yeah, okay, but I'm going to find the one little number that makes it technically not a lie.
And we call you're right, and we call that spin. And a lot of politicians do that fairly regularly. I'm just saying, from my perspective, and I know that because I come from the world of politics. I had never seen someone like him who literally has no connection
Yeah,
to the truth. And again, you and I disagree, but I could never support someone ever who I felt lied every time he opened his mouth.
yeah.
But you don't think it's
Yeah, I don't
that
think he
bad.
lies every time he opens his mouth. And again, I go back to the fact that, again, we can't take, like, we look at this we have to look at this in context, right? Because it's not all about Donald Trump when it comes to voting. It's about what's on the other side of that vote as well, right? And if there was an option on the other side of that vote that I felt was close enough in policy that was a much better human being, I would vote for that person. Like that.
No, I
That's
get
what I
it.
said
I
from the
get
get
it.
go about the
Yeah, I get it.
primary. But w- when I look at Biden, I don't see someone who's fit for office. I don't see someone who tells the truth. I see an angry, bitter old man who, like,
Stop there. Stop there. Stop there. I want you to
yeah,
repeat that. Do you like? I believe Trump is
yeah,
unfit. Do you believe Trump's
no,
unfit? Do I agree that I think Biden's
yeah,
81. I wish he were 61, but I don't believe Biden is unfit to be president. Do
yes.
you? Tell me why. Tell me why.
I mean, the guy can't stand up in front of an audience and speak correctly and take off the cuff questions from the media. He has no press conferences, is probably the least accessible president we've ever seen.
Stop there. Stop there for a sec. Stop there for a sec. Again,
Yeah,
he's old. But to be consistent, you're talking about the way Biden speaks, and he doesn't speak real well anymore. But you've told me over and over it doesn't matter how a president
yeah,
speaks
yeah.
or
But
what he says.
I think the pattern in which that speech comes across is concerning to me about his overall health. Like, you make a great point in this argument is that Trump and Biden aren't very far off in age, but if you put those two guys in a room with 5 people that have never met them before and said who is more mentally fit and acute and aware, every single one of them would say Donald Trump is more engaging, more alive, more like in the moment than Joe Biden.
Thurston, Thurston, you and I can fight over alcohol. I will push back like a banshee on that. Um, but I acknowledge that when we look
Yeah,
at Biden, he presents old. Like he's the old we're
right.
all used to. Trump is 2.5 years younger. Trump doesn't present as old, but I would argue he doesn't present as old because he's fucking nuts. Like he says more stupid shit than Joe Biden does, and it's not even close. Nonsensical shit. So I think if you put both of them in front of people, most people would say they're both
No, yeah, I
out
don't
to lunch.
disagree with you. But again, right, we're talking a microcosm, right? We have two choices here, right? We're not trying to say, again, yeah, you put them both in a room, people are probably going to come out of there being like, "What the fuck?" Like with both of them. But we got to choose one. It's either that or don't vote, and I think every American should exercise their right to vote. And so, uh, you know,
So respond to this because outside of the fact that I believe Trump is a threat to our democracy. I believe Trump thinks he's
yeah,
above the law. I know you disagree. I could go on and on and on.
I'll
But
agree with
respond
you.
to
I think
this one.
Trump does think he's above the law. I do agree with you there.
Well, then, damn you, Thurston. I'll buy you a beer. How could you vote for anyone who believes he's above? Like, I know you got
One
problems with
answer.
Biden. I
One
don't
answer.
think Biden. I don't think Biden thinks
It's
he's
easy.
above the law.
It's
Trump
either. It's
does.
easy because it doesn't matter that he believes he's above the law. He's not. We just found out today he's not. So who cares if he believes it? We just found out today, 3 hours ago, 2 hours ago, he's not above the law.
So
So
it doesn't. So it's a great point, Thurston. And you come back to this, and I disagree with it, but I respect it. Even if Trump's a threat to our democracy, even if he does think he's above the law, if he tries to act like he's above the law as president, he'll be
yeah, Joe, it's
quarantined.
very
Like,
likely the Democrats win the House. Like we're talking, even if Trump wins the presidency, it's highly likely the Democrats win the House, even if we assume and we get lucky and the Republicans sweep all three. Okay, then we're talking what, a year and a half before midterms. If Trump is really off the wall to the point he's trying to turn America into what everyone is like, Nazi
Putin, a
Germany again,
dictatorship,
right?
like
Like,
he said, a
yeah, then
dictatorship.
I have complete and total faith in the American people to then turn around, like I will do, and vote for Democrats across the board in the midterms and put the House and the Senate back in control of the Democrats to stop him. But in my
So so
wildest
then so
fantasy, that will
then
never happen. Never.
okay, but so then if he did
Yeah,
win and he acted and did things that convince you, okay, this guy is
I'd vote for
threatening our
Democrats in
basic.
the midterms. 100%.
Thank you. Thank
100%.
you. Last thing I want to ask you, and I want to take it back to COVID. The other reason why I think Donald Trump is utterly
Yeah,
unfit, and this doesn't apply to Biden, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, Barack Obama, any other
right.
president I've ever known. I think Trump is humanly incapable of putting the country's interest ahead of his own. I think he's humanly incapable of putting anybody or anything's interest
Yeah,
ahead of his own. And I go to COVID, and I'll spit this out first, and then you respond to it. COVID hits in early 2020. If Donald Trump had been smart, and if Donald Trump had been capable of putting the country first, Donald Trump would have been reelected in a fucking heartbeat. In a heartbeat. It's like COVID, Thurston, was like the country's going to war, and it's like we were going to war. The country would rally behind the president during wartime. And if Trump had just handled COVID like a normal fucking human being, instead of making it all about himself and he was worried about how it would impact his election, Trump was incapable of putting COVID ahead of his own reelection. Whereas I think if he had done it, he'd have been reelected in a heartbeat.
Yeah. So
Go ahead.
one, to your point about not being able to put anything above himself, I think what just happened today 100% eradicates that comment, because if if
Explain.
he didn't care about this country and didn't care about the people in this country, he could have bowed out of running again, and no one would have prosecuted him for all this random stuff they're going
Oh,
after him for. He could have sailed off
you
to the
give him.
sunset. And like, if all he cared about was his well-being, then he could have left and said, I'm done with this, like, let's not go through all these criminal
Oh,
trials, like,
God.
yeah.
Thurston, you give him so fucking much credit. No, my God, no. Because all he cares about is himself. He wants to he wants to become president. He wants to stay in the news. He wants to avoid going to jail, which is why he wants to be
I mean,
president. All he cares about. If he cared about other people, you know
that's
what, Thurston? If he cared about other people, he'd have stepped down and let DeSantis or Nikki
yeah, but
Haley be
Joe,
the
I mean,
nominee.
that's fine, and that's your opinion. But like, I have people, a really good friend of mine who was on my learning team at business school, who worked in his administration directly with me, and said he also worked in the Obama administration as well, and sat through both those presidencies, and said that the way Trump treated people, especially when they had those medal, like before the State of the Union address, that would come in and individually meet with him outside of cameras, nobody else in the room. He was in there with them, and said he took a genuine interest in learning their story and learning about them, and didn't rush them out of there. And like, you can say all you want, but they're like, to say the guy doesn't care about anyone or any American and only cares about himself, I think is a little extreme. Is he a narcissist? Absolutely. Does he care about Donald Trump as number one? Sure. But that doesn't mean he doesn't care about other people, and that he doesn't care
Did
about
he?
the
Did
betterment
he?
of the country.
Did he? Yeah, I think he's beyond narcissist. I think he's a psychopath. Did he botch? Thurston, in your mind, did he botch COVID? Like, like that could have been an opportunity just
Yeah,
politically
well,
to get reelected if he didn't.
I think I'll say this. Look, none of us have ever been through a situation like that. So in hindsight, it's always easy to say what could have done, what we should have done, what we could have done better. We were in the moment of an event that hasn't happened since what, the plague back in, the influenza back in, yeah, 100
100
years,
years,
right? So
100
none of us were prepared for that. We were all scared. No one knew what to do. Like, I wouldn't judge any president for what happened, good or bad, during that. Like, of course, we can sit here and say he should have done and could have done better things. And to your point, I think you're right. He could have used it as a rallying cry to help him. Yeah,
bring the country together. We're all in
right.
this
But I
together.
think also the converse side to that is, we were in an election year, with an election coming up very soon when this was all going down, and the forces from the other side weren't exactly helping either. And so, even if he had wanted to be this uplifting voice, there was so much hate from the Democrats to him already, with an election 5, 6 months out, that they weren't going to allow that to happen. We weren't ever. It, I think if it had happened 2 years in, or to a less polarizing figure, then yeah, we probably could have rallied together as a country, maybe like we did in 9/11 with Bush, right? To make it one of those things where we're all in this together, but the forces were already pushing each other so great with the election.
He was president. If he had done that, Thurston, if he
Yeah.
had really been a unifying force and gotten us all together, and this is how we have to behave, and come on, team, go. Do you think he could have gotten reelected? I do.
I'll say this: I don't think what you said what could have ever happened under any circumstance with where we were in the world. Where we're talking March, April, May, June, July, August of an election year, with all that hate towards him from the Democrats.
Oh, he could have put
No chance.
Thurston. He could have put the Dems on the defensive,
Yeah,
but
I
we'll
just don't.
table
I
that
don't
for
think
another
that's.
day.
But could he have gotten reelected if he had done that? I think that's a great question. I don't honestly know what I think. I think that
Let's
the change of the way the election was held was an automatic disadvantage. I mean, it's not just him, right? Republicans always vote more in person. That is historically true. So I don't know. That's a good question. I really, really don't
Let's
know.
uh, let's let's close with this, my friend, because and this has been great, and I
Yeah,
appreciate
no,
it, man.
great.
Um, we haven't changed anybody's mind. We haven't changed anybody's vote. But let's ask us each a question, and I'll start. Have I uh, have I made you think about anything differently than how you've thought of it before this conversation? And I'll start that. Have you made me think about anything differently than before I was when I entered this conversation? And the thing I guess I'd say, Thurston, is talking to you, you're clearly not MAGA, MAGA, MAGA crazy kind of Trumper, down on your knees, I worship the guy. And yet you're not that. And you have, even though I disagree with what you've said, you have very pragmatic reasons for voting for Trump. And you presented them in a very pragmatic way that has nothing to do with just being a crazy culty Trumper. And that's interesting, and you opened my eyes a little bit. You
Yeah,
answer it. Have I made you rethink
no,
anything, or just
100%. And the biggest thing for me is you're the first person I've talked to who's been able to articulate how you really feel he's a threat to democracy. And when we
yeah?
talked, I was sitting here listening to you thinking, man, I hope I'm not wrong on this if he comes into office, because I may think it might not happen, but look, your reasons and the way you present
Yeah,
them are valid. And I would never disagree. I would never tell you, Joe, you're an idiot, because
yeah.
if that's what worries you the most, then you have every right to vote for Joe Biden in this election.
And Thurston, my friend, that's why these fucking conversations are so important.
Yeah, 100%.
Period. You're not crazy. I'm not crazy. Let's hope though that I am wrong. That if he does win, none of this shit happens. Thurston Childry, everybody enjoyed the conversation. If you want, by the way, again, I've mentioned this before. Former college football coach. You gotta love that. If you want to follow him on Twitter, follow him at Coach_Childry. Childrey. Coach_Children. Thurston, my friend, thanks for the conversation. Let's you and
Yeah,
I
Joe,
stay
it's
in
been
touch,
great, man.
brother.
Appreciate you having me on, and we'll grab that beer here soon.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow White Flag with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been White Flag with Joe Walsh.